Yeah, Mac does not support.
We're going live on YouTube. Just 1 second.
Good to start?
Yeah, ma'am. I've started the. Just 1 second. I'll just do another. Ma'am, should I start?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon to everyone. I, on behalf of the BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry, take utmost pleasure to welcome you all to HR Conclave 2022, Future of Work in the Post-Pandemic World. The BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry is a parent organization that promotes commerce and industry in the BRICS nations. The Chamber, founded in 2012, is a registered body under Societies Registrations Act 1860, empaneled with Niti Aayog and recognized by the United Nations. COVID-19 could be the pivotal moment heralding the true beginning of the digital age. As the world quickly adapts to the new reality, technologically and equally important psychologically and socially, we may find ourselves reaching a new digital equilibrium in which moving more digital bits and fewer people and goods will be the new normal. Keeping this in mind, we at the CCI are extremely delighted to present to you HR Conclave 2022, Future of Work in the Post-Pandemic World, an amalgamation of carefully constructed panels and workshops, which will be able to give you a better insight into the world of HR. I would now like to request Dr. BBL Madhukar, Director General, BRICS CCI, for a welcome address. Dr. BBL Madhukar, Director General of BRICS CCI, is also the Chairman of Four School of Management, member of governing body, NDIM and IMS Ghaziabad. He is the Chairman of School of Aviation Science and Technology, a unit of Delhi Flying Club. He is also the President of the Business Board of the European Marketing and Management Association. He has formerly served as Chairman and MD of MMTC. He has received the Best CEO of the Year award and Udyog Ratna award. Last but not the least, he is also the senior member of the Supreme Court of India Bar Council. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm very happy that I'm in the midst of those people who have worked their life upward, in the domain of HR, human relations. This is a very important area. I would say that I'm one of those persons, who has experienced the value of HR in life. What you would like to do in the day-to-day work, you will also like to expect the same kind of thing in the domain of business world. You see, my association with HR started way back in 1965 or so. So I have spent almost 55 years dealing with issues relating to HR. I was at one time, when I finished my small period of 3-4 years as a lecturer in the university, I joined the State Bank of India. And there, I worked in various positions. I knew at that time what the HR was and the industrial relation, the kind of pains and difficulties that we used to face in those days. Let us forget those days which are now gone by. Now the world has changed drastically because of the current pandemic. Our issues are different, our positions are different. We don't see most people most of the time while working with them. So this is a different world altogether. The time has really come when we don't talk to each other, as a matter of, difficulty or convenience, you must say, that we are now not speaking. As the communication world has changed, and without communication, HR least must be desired. HR cannot happen without a two-way communication with the people who work in an organization and the people who are expecting some results from the people who are working in the organization. It's a different world. From mouth to mouth communication, we have moved to mouse communication. Now we don't see the faces of people normally, unless they come on screen like this, where it is Zoom and other things which have now made a different world. We are now seeing that thing that we are able to at least communicate by looking at the faces of people who are participating in this conference. But a time was there when we could not do that. And today we have to interact with employees, in a remote way. Because today the work from home is taking rapid strides. Work from home has become the normal culture, normal work culture. So much so that, even employability has also taken different shape and dimension, because you may be employed in any part of the world. And it is a question of not just work from home, but also that you can also work from anywhere. You could be employed in any American company. Earlier times, they would probably have expected you to be physically present in the premises of that organization, but today it doesn't matter. Even those who live in America, live in New York, work in a New York company, can still work from a place called Meerut or Muzaffarpur or whatever name you give. So any part of the world, people can still keep working. Foreign companies situated thousands of miles away. So therefore, things have changed so drastically that there are opportunities, new opportunities which have come about, and there are some lost opportunities as well. So we have to realize those challenges. The women in particular have gained drastically from the new paradigm. The world has changed, creating opportunities for many people who are good at delivering their value in the virtual manner. But the women who could not, for many reasons, could not participate in the active work life, for working in an organization, they are capable of doing it, yet there are some compulsions like family compulsions, like, it's issues related to child and care and their care, which is also an important segment of the society. Keeping all those in view, the women have gained from this pandemic, which is making them possible to participate in any corporate activity. So these are some of the good things which have happened. Some of the bad things are that, the issues relating to, health care or wellness. That is also a very prominent, very important issue, which the HR person has to look after. That in what way they can reach out to employees, seeing to it that they receive the best attention possible for their welfare, their upkeep, their well-being. That is very important. Protecting the employee, which are meant to transform an organization, is the most primary interest now of the HR person who may be heading any HR company or wherever they are working in that area. They have to look after the welfare. Welfare in the sense that, their well-being, what kind of yoga or other healthcare necessities are met. That is very important for the future of any organization, because they are the people who are going to contribute, to the well-being and growth of the organization. So I don't want to take you much of your time. I have spent personally, very, very long time looking after HR domain in the public sector mainly. So therefore, what remains to be seen is that how do we tackle the problems which might arise later, because things are now taking shape in such a manner as though we are not hoping that we shall be going back again to the old system that will gradually disappear. And people will start finding it easy life, things will become different. The work-life balance and every other issues are also going into different things. We can work from anywhere, we can work in the comfort of the home, and all the things are good and bad things are there associated with this. Or what is important is that you must take care of the mental health of the employees who work with you. How do you promote this is your concern, and this is your challenge. This is the message I can give for the HR Conclave today. And I wish you all the best, because they are very, very, very learned speakers who have been lined up, and we are looking forward eagerly to hearing them and to get their knowledge, their idea, of how to tackle the world which is going to emerge in the very near future. So wish you all the best and hope that the deliberations will largely be useful for those who are currently working in the industry, in the SR domain, and also those who might enter this domain in the times to come. Thank you and wish you all the best for this conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind and inspirational words. Moving on, I would now like to request our honorable guest, Mr. Suneet Sinha, partner and head of people, performance and culture, KPMG, for his keynote address. Mr. Suneet Sinha has over 23 years of experience across organization strategy and transformation, human capital strategy and leadership development, organization design, post-merger integration, cultural transformation, and HR transformation in a digital world. Mr. Sinha has held several high-level leadership positions. His most recent stint was with Accenture Strategy as a managing director, talent and organization practice, wherein he established large transformation engagements across Asia Pacific and the Middle East. He has also built global consulting capabilities in geographies such as China, Indonesia, and Latin America. He has also worked with Anderson and Mercer in the human capital space, M&A integration and talent consulting. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Suzanne, and a very good afternoon to everyone. And also for those of our participants who are joining us from other time zones, good morning and good evening. As I speak to you today from Gurgaon, yes, I was hearing the opening remarks. And the fact that we're all back to, at least in India, back to remote work. So hope everyone is safe and well. I would like to thank the BRICS CCI for the opportunity to share my thoughts here today and kind of set the tone for what is a very exciting agenda. I know there are panel discussions and workshops ahead which will talk about the value of HR in the future of work and also what does this do in terms of new age careers in the workplace. Let me take a step back and actually over the next maybe 10 minutes, give you my perspective, gleaned over the years, having done work in this area and also been involved in some research. I think essentially first demystify when we talk of the future of work, what is it that we're talking about? Is it only about technology or are there some trends that we need to look at? And how the pandemic potentially has not created this, but accelerated some of those trends. That's one. And in the second half of my remarks, I'll then talk about, therefore, the implications of this on organizations and more importantly on, I hope everyone can hear me. There was some...
Yes, sir. I'm just muted them.
So what's the implication for organizations and the HR teams? And therefore, what are potentially some strategies of how we can navigate this future? So firstly, the term's been in vogue for almost a decade now. I recall participating in conferences and some research and talking about this way back in 2012 and 13. And I think we've been on a journey where it was only thought about as all about automation and digital and use of technology. I think today there are many other trends also. There are many other trends also which I think we need to think about. Firstly, my own submission is my personal view is that the future is already here. Now, obviously, this will keep evolving, but a lot of the trends that we just own even 4 or 5 years back, or even pre-pandemic, used to think about as lying in the future 5 years or 10 years down, is already with us. And the first one is around technology. Absolutely, I think a lot of people ask me that does that mean that all the jobs will be replaced? AI will replace humans? I think that's a very Hollywood view of AI and automation, I dare to say. I think the future is more human plus machine. It's not an either or, it's an and. But of course, the implication of that is going to be that more and more automation, more and more digitization. And for people working in various organizations of any size, whether you're in a startup, you're in a small or medium enterprise or a large global organization, I think we'll have to get more and more used to working with high tech or digital tools as we are doing in our social lives as well, using various kinds of tools and applications. So the future is human plus machine. It's not either or. However, it will impact the way we do the work. I mean, just a simple example today, right? In the oil and gas industry, for instance, in remote pipelines where earlier you need to send a crew of technicians and engineers to check on a pipeline. Today, they just float a remote drone, a robotic drone, and the drone goes and checks the pipeline. And only if a human intervention is required, does the human crew need to go over there. I mean, that's one example. In healthcare, I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so healthcare diagnostics today, for instance, there are AI applications today used by oncologists in the space of cancer research and cancer diagnostics, where instead of having to look at hundreds and millions of data points, the AI does the initial passing, and then it comes to a doctor or specialist who then looks at the diagnostics, and that's helping. That's helping in supplementing what human expertise and judgment is. However, I mean, I think the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not that all of us will disappear from the workplace, but we'll have to get to work much more closer with the technology. I think the other point is the fact that the pandemic has accelerated this trend. I recall seeing an interview by Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, middle of 2020. You know, we were still in the initial phase of the pandemic, and he talked about a client of his who had been struggling to move to the cloud for the last 2 years, and where every time he would talk to the board of this global organization, they would say, you know, we are a traditional organization. It will take us at least 2 to 3 years to move to the cloud. Guess what happened when the pandemic hit? They actually did that whole migration in a matter of weeks. In fact, 8 or 10 weeks, if I recall the interview correctly. So I think that whole human plus machine future is getting accelerated. I think the other one is the fact that organizations, again, big or small, we like control, we like predictability, we like stability, and that's where I say that while modern management principles of Frederick Taylor has helped us scale and grow businesses massively. But I think today, where we live in a world of perpetual black swans, and I mean, just for those of you who may not have heard of the term, it was coined by the economist and futurist Nassim Taleb, who writes about this in context of the 2008 financial crisis. In my mind, the 2008 financial crisis was still predictable, because we do have had financial crises over a decade or couple of decades into it. But something like a once in a century pandemic is a true black swan. And I would imagine that with aspects like climate crisis and maybe the disruptions that could happen because of geopolitical events, I think the organizations need to prepare for more such black swans. And therefore, moving from systems and processes and policies and strategies which were about business as usual, which were about controlling and predicting, we may need to be more agile. And I use that word very carefully. It's often used in very, very different contexts. But I think the ability to predict the future and really control what you want to do as an organization is that I think degree of freedom is getting shorter and shorter. I think from a matter of years, it became decades, it became years, and today it could even be a matter of months, as the last 2 years have shown us. So those are some big trends. And the third one, which is the big elephant in the room, is the climate crisis, which is amongst us. And therefore, what's the opportunity? One is that, you can look at that as a challenge and a risk, but I would say that's also an opportunity for organizations to significantly start and looking at what does a decarbonized world or a carbon neutral world look like for them, and not just in industries which may have a carbon footprint because of the way the business model is, but also those who can have an impact in the wider ecosystem. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. So that's the big mega trends. Now, what does this mean for HR and organizations? I think 2 or 3 other trends over there. So therefore, clearly, the way people need to work and the type of skills they need to have and the type of skills that organizations today are paying a premium for are changing. Now, often we tend to think it's mostly technology skills. However, if one just looks at some of the trend of the World Economic Forum's hot skills survey, which started about a few decades back, and if you just track how it's changed from 2010 to 2015 to 2020, in the top 10 skills, nowhere will you see technical skills or technology skills. What you see is a lot of human skills, a lot of skills around coaching, problem solving, creativity, emotional intelligence, empathy. I think that's going to be an interesting one, because while yes, technology is becoming more and more pervasive, but the skills that you're hiring for are more skills which allow people to be more interdisciplinary, not just be functional specialists, but be able to work across teams and across organizational silos. So that's one big trend that HR, I think, today needs to change towards, because when we are hiring, we typically end up hiring because of years of experience or the kind of technical qualification a person may have. How do you really make sure that you're also giving equal emphasis to those skills? That's, I think, one impact on HR. The other one I would say is that I think this decade is probably the first time when we'll have multiple generations in the workplace, because people are working longer, not just and not just in developed markets, but even in emerging markets. BRICS, for instance, people are ready to work in different contractual arrangements longer. No one's looking forward to a retirement and I'm sitting on a beach, or I'm sitting and reading books for the rest of my life. So therefore, how do you look at today there are 3 or 4 generations actually already there. You have the Gen X. I'm part of the Gen X generation. You have the millennials or the Gen Y. The Gen Z is just coming out of campuses and universities, and you still have the baby boomers who are holding senior level positions at board level and in the C-suite. So therefore, how do you make sure that you're segmenting what you do from a policy and process perspective to cater to this multi-generational workforce? Each of who have very different aspirations and very different motivations. I think related point is that after the pandemic, I doubt all of us, at least most organizations, clients I speak to, no one seems to be wanting to go back to a 5-day or a 4-day or whatever 6-day work week. So therefore, and the entire HR ecosystem was engineered around people going to an office, people going to a workplace. Now today, the office is in your home or wherever else you're working in from. So therefore, how do you really look at your policies, the way you reward people, the way you engage with them, the way you even train them, drive the learning agenda, when you will be in a hybrid model where everyone may not be in the same location? I think in the opening remarks we heard about the fact that you could do a role from anywhere in the world. I would say yes. I mean, finally, I think people used to say world is flat, geography is history. I would say that tended to normally imply that there's a lot of talent mobility globally. I think that talent mobility, because of various reasons of work visas and restrictions on labor markets, may not go away. But I think the pandemic and this virtual working has truly made the world flat. And geography is history and will continue to be so if we see this trend, because there are flip sides to it, which are the challenges that one needs to handle in terms of the social connect and the engagement. But on the positive, I mean, the amount of productivity and flexibility that you're able to give to people. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work and be in large cities in Brazil, such as Rio de Janeiro and Brasilia, or Beijing and Shanghai, and of course cities in India. And saving that 4 hours of commute is a godsend in terms of productivity and our own sense of flexibility. So I would say those are the implications, and I don't plan to give out solutions here. I think that's something that the panels and the workshops should definitely address. But I think my I would say 2 or 3 takeaways is that HR organizations need to be ready, and today I at least see a reluctance, because often people think of that it's you put on a technology, you put in certain virtual tools, etc., and you solve the challenge. I personally feel that the challenge for HR functions per se, and that's something to think about, is to be able to really reorient themselves to have less control and actually allow more empowerment to people managers, to the business, to functions. I mean, that's from an HR function perspective. And the larger point on organizations, I already said that I think today, whether it's any stakeholder, whether it's your employees, whether it's your ecosystem partners in terms of suppliers and vendors, or the large society at large, I think you need to start thinking more, I would say, people-centric. Instead of using a very process-driven top-down approach, we will need to involve people and co-create some of those policies and processes. And I think lastly, HR, again, going back to HR, and this is true of organizations as well. In today's workforce, which is coming in, is so much more conscious of aspects such as what does good corporate citizenship behavior mean? What's the carbon footprint? What is the organization doing in terms of helping with sustainable development? So I think the aspects like corporate citizenship and ESG also become part of that employer brand initiative that HR typically does. In the past, it's all been about career growth, rewards. What does it mean from a brand perspective and the kind of skills you get. I think today more and more it's also about what type of organization I want to be associated with and what's the larger purpose of that organization and does that align with my values and purpose. I think that's going to be more and more important because today there are far more opportunities. I mean, if you look at data around the world, and I'm not sure if there's data from the BRICS on this, but in the OECD countries at least, the percentage of the workforce which is working in large institutions and organizations which have more than 1,000 employees has actually been falling for the last 3 decades. And a lot of people are wanting to become what we call as gig workers, freelancers, or joining smaller startups or smaller enterprises and work for themselves rather than work for large institutions. So I think those are, I mean, in net, the future is exciting, but don't try to plan and predict it and control it much more. That would be my takeaway for all the young leaders on this forum, as well as the other HR leaders who are going to be talking about this in more detail in the panels and the workshops ahead. So with those, I'll close my remarks, Suzanne, and wishing everyone a great summit ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful address and also a wonderful start for today's conclave. Without any further delay, I would now like to introduce our speakers for the first panel, Role of HR in Creating Future of Work. We have with us Mr. Sandeep Tyagi, who is the Head of Human Resources, Samsung India. Mr. Sandeep Tyagi heads the Business HR and Organization Development of Samsung India. He actively looks after talent acquisition, talent engagement, and talent development for the company. He is also involved in building people and organizational capability, strengthening employer branding, leading change management, and organization development initiatives, leadership assessments, and development for the business, succession planning, etc. We have with us Mr. Sumit Saini, who is the CEO of Inspire One, an alumnus of University of London. Mr. Saini has experience in cross-section of areas including top team development, strategy development, digital mindset, and organization development. Sumit sir is the CEO and partner for Inspire Ones for the last 3 years. Prior to this, he led Harvard Business Publishing's Learning Solution and Delivery Organization for Asia Pacific. During his tenure with Harvard Business, he also helped a cross-section of clients to develop the leadership pipeline and undergo organization transformation. Last, we have with us Mr. Vikas Dua, who is the Head of HR, IPG Dextra, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Mr. Vikas Dua is a leading voice in the HR community in India, having spent over 18 years in the domain, holding leadership position across industry sector. Currently, he is heading the human resource function in India for IPG Dextra, part of Interpublic Group, the world's leading marketing communications company. He's also the author of a best-selling book, HR in My Heart, Leadership Lessons Like Never Before, and has delivered tech stock besides mentoring and advising various HR tech startups, including Huddle Up, a platform that facilitates building happier and healthier workplace. I would like to offer my sincerest thanks to all the participants who are a part of today's insightful webinar. Participants who are wishing to ask questions can drop them in our chat box. Please note that we will be circulating a Google form towards the end of the session, and all the participants are required to fill in it in order to receive a certificate. Without further ado, I would now like to request our moderator for the first panel, Mr. Ankit Jam, author and Senior Associate Director, HR at KPMG, to take over.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Sumit, Vikas, Sandeep. This is, for me, it's a very unique opportunity because I've had the luxury and the pleasure of knowing each one of you individually in various capacities, and I've had some great conversations with each one of you. So to all the participants, next 30 minutes, you got to hold on to your breath, hold on to the chair, because I'm going to build the excitement up. You have no idea what we planned. But, you know, I desperately wanted to conceptualize this HR conclave and call it at post-pandemic. You have no idea my desperation to put the post in front of pandemic, but the pandemic is just doesn't giving us the permission to put that word post. So while we're still dealing with this, there's only one thing common between the entire world going through COVID, and the other thing common is Avengers. We have different cultures here, we have different geographies here, and I think if something unites all of us, one, of course, is the pandemic, and the other is Avengers, because every time I speak to different sets of people, I think we're all united by Marvel Comics. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is that moment in Endgame where the Thor's hammer comes flying to Captain America. He catches it and he says, "Avengers, assemble." So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I take off. This is a futuristic session for the next 30-35 minutes. We're going to talk about certain hard-pressing issues of which, at this point of time, I don't think humanity has a proper articulative answer. We've not reached a perfect answer, but together, again, like Captain America says, we're trying to fight this battle. So I'm Ankit Jham. I'm going to be there for 30-35 minutes. I was given a choice to be on the either side. He said, you can do the answering part of it, but I raised my hand. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask questions, which is easier, which is more convenient, and which is more fun. So ladies and gentlemen, Sumit, Mr. Tyagi and Vikas, congratulations for choosing to do the tough job. I'm going to enjoy. My first question is, when it comes to future of work, when it comes to role of human resources, let's try and look at this from a crystal ball gazing phenomena. If there was a crystal ball in front of you, and there was this lady dressed in rubies and diamonds looking into the crystal ball, and if you were the lady looking into the crystal ball, which hopefully should give us some indication of the future, my question to you, and Sumit, since I can see you as the first person on the camera, this question will come to you directly. What is that crystal ball showing us when it comes to future of work and role of human resources? Give me your crystal ball answer, Sumit.
Thanks so much, Ankit. And I must say that you do have set expectations quite high by calling all of us the Avengers. And good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is safe and fine. I think we've done, some of these crystal ball, gazing conversations with several such companies. And I think the one critical thing that comes to my mind is a future where every employee, irrespective of the nature of employment they have, whether they are a gig worker, whether they are a full-time employee, whether they work remote, whether they work in the office, is progressing adequately towards their work, and their workplace is fair for them. So I think if as HR leaders we are able to create an organization which is truly irresistible for the workforce and truly ensures that each and every person is able to meet their goals, they feel that the workplace is fair, then all the initiatives that HR is currently taking will be successful. To me, really, that's the only barometer that is critical. So I'll take a pause here.
Fantastic. Fantastic. This reminds me, Sumit, of this Josh Bersin white paper where he created this model on the irresistible organization. And ladies and gentlemen, it's available on Google, so please understand, please read through it. But I get the point that the challenge which we have is to create that irresistible workplace, a non-physical workplace. Completely with you, Sumit. Let me go to Vikas. Vikas, if you're there, I'd like to see you on the camera.
Yes, Ankit, I'm here. I guess I need video access. It just got disconnected somehow, but I'm back now.
Okay, fantastic. Team, a quick video access could be provided to Vikas.
Sure. And if there's a question you shared, I'll request you to repeat that.
I will. So just to fill you in, since you logged out, we started with this crystal ball gazing phenomena, and Sumit and I were talking that if there was a crystal ball and we go into this dark dingy room with lights and this beautiful looking lady with all the malas and the anklets looking at us and asking us that, tell me, what do you want to know? My question to that lady will be, what is the future of work? And that's the question I'm going to ask Vikas to you also, that as a leader, as a person who's been leading human resources for years, look into your crystal ball and tell me, what is the future of work and how is HR going to cope up with that? But I'm still waiting for the camera. Suzanne, can you check if you make Vikas the host, I think he should be able to get the camera access.
So while they activate that, honestly, I think, Ankit, that's $1 million question. And, ironically, the conference panel discussion topic is also future of work in a post-pandemic world. And like you rightly pointed out yourself at the start, are we really anywhere close to a post-pandemic world. That's a big question in front of us. And the other bit about the future of work, which Sunit also talked so beautifully about, it's literally crystal ball gazing. Of course, there are some few trends that are out there, and one can hope to pick up from these. But the fact of the matter remains that with variables of this order, it will require someone far more intellectual, far more accomplished, maybe one of the Marvel comic heroes himself or herself to come down on earth and help us solve this dichotomy. So that's where I am on this. But just happy to share some thoughts as we go forward on what other trends that I'm seeing day in and day out as we kind of work in our organization.
Fantastic, Vikas. So let me quickly jump to Sandeep Tyagi. Sandeep, sir, you're there?
Yeah. Hi, Ankit. Hi.
Hello, such a long time.
Absolutely. So great to be part of this discussion. Yeah. How are you?
Very well, sir. So here's my first question to you. If there was a crystal ball which enables us to look into the future, and you've had a long career, a long marathon career in the field of human resources. You've seen so much ups and downs. How do you see the future unfolding, unraveling? Shed light on that, sir.
Yeah, great question, Ankit. So I basically foresee a very tech-intensive workplace, which will be equally fun-loving workplace. People would work through their gadgets. Less of gradually as we progress, less of manual interventions and more usage of AI, concepts like AR or VR into the workplace. So they are very revolutionary. We already started doing this. One second. So we already started doing this in our induction program using VR technology. So we look forward to even using AR in near future. So I basically foresee a very tech intensive workplace, which will be a lot of fun, will make learning and development very equality driven towards people. So that's going to be a very big change, more democratic in nature.
Fantastic. Well, I agree. The disruptive technologies do make a difference. They can add to engagement. They can also add to enhancing of attention spans and learnability. On that note, I want to go back to Sumit. Sumit, back to you. Sumit, you and I had a conversation many years back on technology, and we did a conference together. We're looking at Industrial Revolution 4.0. We are looking at an age where we are getting hit by technology, and the technology's redundancy speed is sometimes outpacing everything else. And that sometimes worries me. My question is that you look at that trend and then you look at the entire gig economy. The entire decontractualization of an employee. The word employee itself, I fear, is going to be redundant at some point of time. How are you coping up with that as an organization, mastering into skills and making people ready for business and life and work? What is your go-to response to the incoming call of gig economy?
I think that's a great question. Again, maybe I'll answer it in two different manners. One is maybe I'll just first talk about the gig and then talk also about the technology interfaces over there. So I think on the gig side, as we all can see, there are multiple positives, right? I don't need to underscore the importance and the advantages because simply put, you get access to great talent at a reasonable cost. But I think for the gig economy to work in India, there are still three critical implications that I see that organizations need to sort out for. One is that today, currently, there is no real regulation which protects the gig workers themselves. So what happens is that whereas organizations employ gig workers for a certain category of jobs, there is no real regulation that protects the workers or the gig employees themselves. And I think it's about time that in the next couple of years, we start some regulation in this particular area, where regulations will start coming in to say what is a gig worker, what is not a gig worker, and what is the employer's liability towards gig working. So that's number one thing that I believe that we should all watch out for. The second is that when organizations, particularly who work on a knowledge-intensive business, such as ours, or such as professional services firms, or even tech organizations, there is a lot of chances of data or security lapse, leakages going on. Because what can happen is that when I'm working as a gig worker, let's say for KPMG, I may also be working as a gig worker for another organization, and that confidentiality can be worrisome. And therefore, organizations will have to invest in the right level of data and security around it. But the third, I believe, which is the biggest implication of the gig working, is that gig workers effectively mean that the managers that we need to have in the organizations are super managers. They're not normal managers, they're super managers. Because in a very short duration of time, I have to connect with this particular individual and not just get the work done, which is what management is all about, but also to inspire them, to motivate them, to make them feel connected to the purpose of the organization or the purpose of the team. And therefore, the demands from the managers are going to, will become significantly higher, particularly in the area of inclusion, which is how do I, as a manager, adopt a more inclusive leadership style, given there'll be a fair amount of gig workers. So that's one part, which is as far as the gig workers is concerned. On technology, maybe I'll limit my comment for the moment only to gig working. Gig working will definitely require a very deep level of implementation of technology, not just in how do we source the gig workers, where I think there are strong technology platforms which are already available, but how do we keep them engaged? Organizations like ours, and particularly in the consulting industry, have been using gig workers for a fairly long period of time, maybe for 10 years and now. And there the challenge is not so much of attracting the gig workers, but to keep them engaged and keep them connected with the organization. So I think that's where the biggest technology intervention may be required. So those are some of the
I like the point that there is no unified bylaw regulatory insight, and maybe the industrial law itself, the labor codes, will need to bake the gig workforce and their needs into this. I like that point. Because I want to come to you as an HR leader, you head human resources, and the kind of business IPG is into is appeals to millennials, appeals to people who are 22, 23, 24, 25, and I'm assuming that's the demographics average age of the workforce also. They would also want to work for a startup. They want to do their social influencing bit. They want to do 10,000 other things and yet have a job, which also is in a way futuristically exciting and is form of a gig. And that's very complicated because the needs and the motivations and why people rise to the occasions to do something is so complex. My question to you is, with the gig thing, looking at you, how are you preparing as a head human resource, and how are you preparing your organization businesses? Because the business stakeholders might still be the ones who would have taken birth in a different century, but they're dealing with a crowd which is very different. Talk about your challenges and how can organizations like yours prepare for gig?
Sure, Ankit. I think great that you picked up this topic. And fun fact, to put the context in place, in 2019 there was a movie that was released. It was called What Men Want. In 1999, sorry. And in 2000, a movie was released which was called What Women Want.
Mel Gibson.
Correct. And today, if you were to ask me if someone had to make a movie in 2022, I think it should be what employees want. Because that's what is really driving all of us in the corporate space.
Conclave.
And what I see happening is that, like you rightly said, the young generation, the ones that are now entering the workforce, the ones who are so-called at the starting phase of their career, are really people who are individuals in their own right. It's not a cut, copy, paste approach, which some of us who graduated, and I will not, for the sake of protecting my age, reveal that a few years ago, were part of a generation where pretty much it was a standard, campus placement scenario, companies coming into campus with a pitch, and it was one size fits all. That was the guiding approach, and people went by the bucket loads truckloads to join their future workplaces. Today, each individual probably has much more clarity, insights, aspirations, and therefore for HR leaders like myself, I think it's very, very important to continue listening. And I think that is the strongest skill that we are trying to develop within our ecosystem in the organization, because unless you can pick up the right signals and well in time, there's no way you can even start creating your plan, forget about executing it. So that's where we are as far as understanding the needs of the workers are concerned. At a broader level, if you ask me, I think we've been prepared for it for quite some time. We've had mechanisms in place which allow for both full-time employees, allow for contractual part-time workers, which allow and create mechanisms for people returning to the workplace to come on board. And that is something I think we picked up much earlier, quite frankly, because to my experience, we are only talking about gig now because it's somewhere, impacting the so-called white-collar workers. But if you go back even 2-3 decades, you would know that that has pretty much been the lifeblood of any large manufacturing organization in our country. And the auto sector is a big example of that. They're used to having contractual workers during peak periods to add shifts to increase production of vehicles. And these workers were let go at different points for plant maintenance or for reduced work requirement. When it comes to the service industry, of course, this started becoming popular 3-4 years ago. Now it's pretty much at a point where I would assume most large organizations, established organizations, have some part of their workers following non-traditional employment models. And I think as we go forward, this will only become more and more customized and personalized to each individual, to the extent that even compensation packages will have to get aligned to different individuals. Some may have the need for parental insurance, some may not have the need, some may require an outlocation benefit, some may not. So till now, I think we're still at the stage where we've kind of put in place the basic framework for supporting multiple kind of workers, but the fine tuning still has to start, and that's where I think the future is.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you so much for that. I think that word fine tuning definitely rings a bell. It's quite important. I don't think we're asking new questions. It's just the same questions are being asked today with a higher volume. The need for flexibility, the need for building meaning in work, these are not new questions. They're just being asked with a very high pitch, and we need to answer that. So Sandeep, I'm going to come back to you now. Would love to see you on camera. You've had experience. I know that higher appliances, Videocon, you've dealt with some very difficult industries, FMCG. Talk to us about gig in industries such as manufacturing, FMCG, FMCD. How will that entire gig workforce look like when it comes to industries and sectors such as yours? And what will change, what will not change? You've seen too many ups and downs business cycles. So give us some view on how gig economy in FMCG manufacturing would shape up.
Yeah, so Ankit, today FMCD and FMCG works on a concept where customer interface is very critical. So you need people at the cutting edge who directly interact with customers. And there actually what happens is the need varies. It varies seasonally, it varies according to demand varies seasonally and according to the festivals. It also varies geographically. So there is a Onam in Kerala, there is a festival Bihu in Assam. So, the consumer buying pattern differs across the country, and India is a fairly large country, diverse in terms of their buying patterns. So we need people, we need a lot of flexibility in terms of people. We may require large number of people in the month of September in Kerala due to Onam. So similarly, Puja in West Bengal, in eastern part of India is a way. So gig economy, gig worker concept provides us that flexibility to hire and to leave off the workers or the people who come in direct touch with the customers. They can be sales promoters, they can be customer service people. So this concept provides us that much needed flexibility without incurring much needed cost. It also enables us to get particular skills at the right time when you really require that. So, for example, if you are approaching for microwave ovens, if you are approaching a housing society and you need people who have to address a section of society, say a housewife, so and then you need more of females, so you can gather them at a short time who are rightly trained for that particular product category, and they would also earn much more, because if they are not permanent people, their contract terms will be different from the permanent people. So these are the advantages and these are the concepts which we follow for employing people on a freelance basis or contractual basis.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think I like the point that in every industry, people should not think that, this is a new age, new world, and it's only applicable to new startups or professional services. But the fact is that the trend of gig economy has potential to offer a value proposition to all industries, all sectors. It's up to us to conceptualize that value and manifest that value in reality. I'm going to now go back and ask specific questions basis your core expertise to all three of you. Sumit, you've spent a large part of your life in skilling people, in making organizations get the right kind of traits, values, skill sets. My question to you is specifically in terms of skilling. And the question comes from the fact that, one of the challenges which we are facing, according to me, in a hybrid setup is the erosion of culture, is sometimes the erosion of value. And it's not to say that people are losing value, but the fact is that unification and that sense and that smell of same culture, which was existing in a physical environment, is not there. So first, is from a skilling point of view, from a culture point of view, how can an organization preserve culture? Is my question to you.
Sure. So I think, first of all, my view is that what's happened is that because of the pandemic, every organization has been forced to do two things. One is every organization has been forced to digitize, but also every organization has been forced to look at more positive, forward-looking HR policies. The reason I'm talking about it is because before the pandemic, several organizations did not have work from home options. Now, all of us have been forced towards, making it happen. So we are effectively going into an age where every organization has to be a good employer. That's table stakes.
Yeah.
The tough part of the challenge is how do you really create that differentiated culture within the organization? And there I believe that there are 3 points which are critical. One is that what we're realizing is that organizations who are able to grow rapidly within the pandemic and the post-pandemic world will be organizations who are being able to build a strong culture based on purpose of the organization, which is that one line, that one statement which defines who we are and what do we really do. So organizations who've been able to invest in that, purposeful, purpose creation and building are doing extremely well. And I think Microsoft is one fabulous example of an organization in that particular domain. Second is the issue that I still see in terms of culture building for organizations is that as HR leaders, sometimes we give our employees too many frames of reference. There are the values, there is the brand, there are competencies, there are behaviors. And that to an employee is very, very confusing. And that does not really build culture. Culture truly gets built by giving all employees from the start till to the end only one frame of reference. Now, whatever that frame of reference work for the organization is different. For some organization, it's the values. For some, it's the behaviors. For some, it's the brand of the company. But choosing one frame of reference and sticking to it and reinforcing that, I believe, is the critical, element in going over there. And the third is to, set up a very different benchmark. I spoke about the irresistible organization framework Ankit, you also referred to it. I would highly encourage all of us to look at that particular framework, because if we set benchmarks as can we create a good place to work, I don't think it's enough anymore. I think as organizations, we need to say, how do we create a unique place to work, which is irresistible for the type of talent we want to attract? So those were the points, Ankit.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you. Yeah, I must recommend Irresistible Organization. It's a fantastic report by Josh Burson. It's available. You must look at it. It asks some very pertinent question, also answers those questions in a very succinct fashion. Thank you, Sumit, for that wonderful point. Because I want to come to you. Leading an organization, one of the challenges as a subset of culture is engaging people with different choices, different priorities, different emotions, different needs. And engagement at this point of time, call it your sense of belongingness with this organization, attention span, ability to consume information, whichever way you want to look at it. What is your mantra to ensure that your population is engaged in their work and has a sense of belonging with that organization? What's your view on that?
Sure, Ankit. So you rightly said, I think engagement is more important today than ever before. And the challenge is that it's more challenging as well because no one's physically connected as such for the last 18 months or so. So how do you replicate some of those coffee conversations, those sutta breaks, and get people to bond with each other, right? And especially when you see the last year, most organizations and across sectors, we've also seen a situation.
One second, for people who've joined us from different geographies, cigarettes in India are called as sutta.
Oh, by now I'm sure it's pretty much pan-India lingo. But sorry, and thanks for clarifying. So those coffee conversations, those walking down the corridors, those having those breaks, those are difficult to replicate in a remote environment for sure. And I think the trick really then is for engagement to become more micro-oriented, in the sense that it's not just HR's role anymore. Everyone in the organization, top to bottom, needs to have their own play as far as engaging with each other is concerned, and especially with their teams and the people that they're closely working with and connected to, their stakeholders, for example. That's the only way that you can try and keep some semblance of engagement ongoing in the organization. Also, a call out to keep in mind is that what initially happened once the so-called lockdowns and curfews were rolled out was that a lot of us in the fraternity tried to replicate the offline engagement programs into the online engagement programs, right? So a Diwali, for example, celebration which used to be on the floor became a sort of Teams Connect where people could do some rangoli on paint or something like that. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. You've really got to reorient and redesign some of these engagement programs. In some cases, leaving employees alone for a brief period can also be great engagement, because not everyone wants to come and dance on a webinar or a Teams call like this one, right? So you've got to understand, and that's where I come back to a point which I made in my previous dialogue as well. Individualization, personalization, whatever you call it, you've got to start getting deeper insight into each one of the people, and then provide them that trigger or those support mechanisms which work for them, because that's the only way they will feel engaged, they will bond with others, and to that extent the longevity with the organization will possibly increase.
Yeah.
So that's what I would share.
Completely on point. I think that point on personalization is so true. You can't have one strategy for all kinds of demographics, because there is demographic, there is a sub-demographic, there is somebody coming from tier 1, tier 2 with different emotions, different aspirations, and you really need to. I'm going to request all the participants to put themselves on mute, otherwise $500. See, it works.
Immediately.
Okay, Sandeep sir, I want you to see on camera. I have a very difficult question for you. The difficult question is that you've been, and this is a confession to the larger group here. Since my career started, I've only seen Sandeep sir as an HR head. So in my head, he's always been the head of HR for the longest time. You've seen people come and go. You've seen contractual workers. You've seen white collar jobs. You've seen blue collar jobs. You've dealt with resignation and the phases of resignation. And my question to you is about this great Indian resignation. It's almost as if people are in search of trans, moksha, and satyaki khoj, and they're trying to quit jobs, go somewhere else, hoping and thinking that they'll find their meaning there. But I don't think that they'll find it there. After 3 years, they'll back to Himalayas, do another meditation, go find more jobs. So my question to you is that how do we deal with this great Indian resignation, this infatuation with leaving jobs? How are you coping up? And what's your advice to our HR leaders?
Yeah, so you see, that's a great question, and any HR guy would be facing this dilemma right now. So you see, Ankit, we are in an age of cryptocurrency today. We are in an age of blockchain, and I mean, very soon even blockchain will be obsolete, and you'll be hit by newer technologies and newer concepts and things like that. So what I feel is, you see, disruption is happening at a very high speed, and HR guys are still in a very fixed kind of a mindset. Some of them. So one has to be really open about it, that there are huge opportunities which are coming, and people are exploring those opportunities. Today, having a job or working for a career for a long time in one job is not very glamorous. So people look for very faster growth. Along with that, yes, your observation that people may come back. So that is a very big phenomena. People are turning back to their also previous employers, and they are being welcomed with open arms. They know the organization, they know the work. So it's both ways. So regarding the great resignation, yes, one has to be prepared to that. So you need to have your strategies in place to have succession planning, strong succession planning, strong talent building, talent pipeline in the organization, so that if you are faced with this situation, your business doesn't get impacted. Also, how do you get people, say your campus hiring programs, your programs like reverse mentoring have to be very, very strong. So you should have a strong pipeline of getting people from various campuses, developing them, growing them into future leaders, and they come up with all the fresh ideas which are currently in vogue. So HR has to be very, very open in terms of how the disruption is happening in technology, should embrace that disruption very, very fast in order to build the, let the business grow dynamically in a very, very fast changing environment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sandeep sir. I do agree with the point when you say that the speed and the pace of redundancy is outpacing everything else, and that's a risk. And HR's openness, agility is going to be very crucial in responding to this state of unpredictability. I'm going to take a pause there. We've got about 85 people. If you have thoughts, questions, tough questions, easy questions to fire, I can hold on to the space for about 2 minutes. Promise to take those questions, and our panelists will try their best to answer. So if you have questions, you can send them to me. I will moderate, or you get the luxury of opening your mics and asking questions directly. Gents, I have many questions, but I also want to do justice to make sure that participants are asking. So anyone with any kind of a question, this is your moment.
I have a question, but I think we should allow our audience before, anybody from the chamber asks. So I think I'll wait.
Or you could put it down on the chat pod, and at least one panelist would read the question and prepare the answer. Let's give them, some breathing space. Okay, people, ask some tough questions. I'm still waiting. The silence is a very good thing in life, but not in a conference. I'm hoping that people are not watching Netflix. That's my perpetual hope in life these days when I'm not looking at people. I also hope that people are not practicing meditation while there's a conference going on. That's also my perpetual hope. To fill into the silence, let me take this opportunity okay, we have a question. Zeba's asked a question. Is it just a work-life balance that has created a situation called the Great Resignation? Fantastic question. It's an open battle. So Sumit, Sandeep, and Vikas, anyone can raise hand and pick the question. Thankfully, I'm not answering this question, so it's up to you guys.
No, I think it's more than that. I'll bat first if that's okay with everyone. I think while work-life balance might have contributed to one of the reasons, I think the bigger reason has been the fact that recruitment boundaries have evaporated, right? Today, pretty much someone sitting in Chennai
there is some HR
conclave for an organization that's hiring for a Mumbai or a Bangalore and be considered equivalent to anyone from any other part of the country. And that has been really liberating for the workforce. So I think they've really grabbed onto this opportunity. Given the fact that for the last 1 year or so, we've not seen organizations trying to pull back people into their physical workplaces. And that has been a huge contributor.
Fantastic, Vikas. Sumit, you have a point.
Yes, I think, from my perspective, the other main cause of this great resignation is also the rising level of equity gap and lack of psychological safety that has kept up in the workforce. What I mean by equity gap is that when people join virtually, there is an equity gap between them versus people who join an organization in a face-to-face manner. And therefore, their chances of success is far lesser. So the way organizations handle with equity gap will be very critical. And the second is that because of the remote way of working, managers are basically spending time in management, which is going from one Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams meeting to another. But it's less leadership, which is connecting with the individual, looking at how can we, inspire each individual, manage the career of the individual. And therefore, rightfully, people will ask questions on what am I doing here and what is my purpose of life. So I think those are a couple of additions from my side.
Let me ask one rapid fire question to all three of you. Rapid fire, you understand, of course, Karan Johar invented this. For the uninitiated, not joining us from India and across the globe, you can Google Karan Johar. We have someone called as Karan Johar. He invented something called as Coffee with Karan and invented rapid fire. So, Sumit, my rapid fire question to you is, and it has to be rapid fire, the biggest challenge which people are facing in hybrid workforce?
Inclusion.
Fantastic. Thank you. There is no coffee hamper. I'm just putting that on the table. Don't expect anything. Vikas, I'm going to come to you. Same question. The biggest challenge which people are facing right now in the hybrid workforce?
Managing the housework.
Managing the housework. Sandeep, biggest challenge in hybrid workforce?
Managing diversity of tasks. So there are a huge amount of tasks. So when you are working in a remote environment, complexity and diversity is too much.
Fantastic. Okay, Jaya, your time. Go ahead and ask the question.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I think when we heard about this concept of great resignation and the equity gap, so my question is to Mr. Sumit Sahni, and I really liked what he talked about in terms of the one standard that an organization should bench on, which is when he talked about value, behavior, or brand. So what has been the learning? I mean, all of them are really significant because, the employees get really confused with multiple signals and multiple guidances. What is your metric? So for example, having spent some of my time in my career earlier at FMCG Pepsi, the one metric was before you take any decision which involves revenue, expense, what is the share increase that's going to come in? So it was sales, right? Likewise, what is your guidance to an organization like ours, for example, which is a service organization or organization which is into networking or building trade and commerce through our efforts of facilitation? What kind of metrics should organizations like ours, say, for example, follow?
Thank you, Jai, for that question. I think different people will have different views. My own view is that between the brand, the values, and the competencies, the main frame of reference should be the brand, because every organization's brand is reflective of the promises we are making to our customers. For BRICS CCI, it will be to the customers here. For Samsung, it will be to the customers of Samsung. For InspireOne, it's to the clients of InspireOne. If we are able to align the promise we are making to the customers to the culture of the organization, we've created a unique org culture. So, I'm a very big believer of just looking at brand as the key source of alignment internally and externally into the organization.
Right. So brand basically would mean the USP or the main mission or vision that you have.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic answer. I'm going to take one last question. Thank you, Jaya, for that wonderful question. We have Sahil joining in. Sahil, shoot your question.
All right. Thank you so much, Ankit. Very nice deliberations over the last couple of hours together. And I think that's really nice. Nice to see you, Sumit, Vikas, and of course, Sandeep. My question is more specific to the last 12 to 18 months. And many of us have onboarded a lot of talent into our respective organizations. And if I go back to how people really learn, right, the basics of saying you have people audio, you have video, and you have kinesthetic learners. Now, typically what we've seen is the average Joe has done really well in the pandemic because, maybe a guy who's preferred auditory or just visual. And there've been people who've been the kinesthetic ones who like to get into meeting rooms, who like to be on the whiteboard, who like to collaborate, co-create. And they really have struggled in spite of them being individually very talented. So with the pandemic going on and the hybrid workforce and all of that that's going to engulf us in the times ahead, any suggestions on how do you get people with great potential, with great talent to embrace these new ways of working so that, earlier you would just sit someone next to you, you would ask him what's happening, you would have a coffee together, whatever. And now that becomes very challenging because everyone is so stuck up with one call after the other. So how does a new joiner typically embrace the culture, understand what works, what doesn't? Because someone may have 15 years experience, but contextually coming into an organization may be at a loss. So that's my question. Anyone who wants to take it, it's open to anyone.
Fantastic question. Thank you, Sahil. Vikas, you want to pick that up?
Sure. So Sahil, great question, and thanks for joining in today. I hope we've added value to you and the others who are listening in today. The
Absolutely.
experience that I've had over the last 18 months is that we've got to try and replicate some of that offline connections into the online medium. I said earlier, it's not optimum. It's not something that's really going to in any way replace the face-to-face and the physical interaction that one has. But having said that, I think the one approach which has worked for us is to try and find various models of communication or connection, which could range from one-to-one interactions to small group meetings to larger town halls, and to kind of space them out, not make them overbearing, to ensure that there is flexibility provided to the attendees to attend, to participate. In some cases, some critical meetings, we may mandate videos to be on and everyone to be an active participant. In some cases, you let everyone be, just because, like to your point, everyone is different. Not everyone wants to be on a video call, visible, interacting live in front of 20 other people. So you've got to try and navigate some of that, virtual medium connection through such mechanisms. Again, the more you make that optional, the more you give flexibility to your employees to kind of opt in rather than make them mandatory, I think works better. That's something that we observed, rather than having just people fill up the boxes on the screen and not really being participative or keen to be part of that engagement. Serves no one's benefit. So that's what I would guide.
Super, Vikas. Sumit and me, Sandeep, any quick snippets additional to what Vikas has said? Maybe we can pick up from your experiences as well.
Sure. So I think from my perspective, I think it's just to constantly watch out for equity gap. See, I think what both you and Vikas have pointed out are various forms of equity gap. If someone is more extrovert, and gets more preference, that's an equity gap. And if someone is more introvert and features is able to perform better in the current environment, that's also an equity gap for the other person. So I genuinely feel that people have to be trained on and specifically the managers on how do you identify where the equity gaps are, because no amount of processes, systems can remove it. There has to be that level of sensitization that needs to be existing in that
Fantastic.
area.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sumit. Thank you, Sumit. Thank you, Sahil, for that question. I hate to say this, but we've got another panel to start, and we got to keep this on time. So Sandeep sir, Sumit, Vikas, to all the participants, thank you so much for this wonderful chat. Like we said that we might not be the ones with answers, but at times asking intelligent questions is all one can do. I want to close all of this at a point. I will take all the questions. We have a session lined up in an hour's time. And unfortunately, you're stuck with me back again in about an hour, half an hour's time. I promise I'll do a good job, not as good as they would have done. But ladies and gentlemen, remember, we are in a stage, you can call this war. And I'm going to call this the city of Gotham. Because HR is going to play the role of Batman, a hero it does not need, but it deserves. Like the silent protector, the watchman of the night, and the protector of the souls. That's what Batman did, and that's the job of an HR. We are looking into a world of possibilities and uncertainties. And at that point of time, if there's anything which can continue to go, it's a world called hope. So don't lose that. Take care of your families. Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I will bring all of us back once again in some other forum. I promise to do that. Thank you, each one of you. Suzanne, over to you. Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you for all the amazing speakers. It was definitely a very insightful panel. For all the people who have just joined in, we have another panel. We will be just starting in 2 minutes, and we have our speakers. I think Divya ma'am, can you hear us?
Hey, what's up? Let me.
Yeah, can you switch on your camera, ma'am? Yeah, great. Okay. So I think we have everyone. We have Urvi, we have Ankita, and we have Mr. Arpit, right? Yeah. Just a second. Yeah. Arpit sir is also here. So for the people who just joined in, this is the second panel, and post this panel, we will be having a workshop. The workshop will be a bit more interactive in a way, and it will not be live streamed. So people who have not filled up the form and for the second panel, they can also join in this panel and just stay online. So without any further delay, I would now like to invite and introduce our speakers and moderator for the second panel, that is the New Age Careers and Opportunities. We have with us Mr. Arpit Chaturvedi, who is the co-founder and CEO of Global Policy Insights. Arpit Chaturvedi is the co-founder and CEO of Global Policy Insights, which is a centrist think tank focused on governance, international political economy, international security, studies and sustainability, which is based out of New Delhi, New York, and London. He is also the co-founder of NB Pol, which is an environment consultancy firm, which is based out of New Delhi. We have with us Dr. Ankita Singh, who is the Senior Vice President and Global Head HR, Admin, IT, Travel at Signex Datamatics. Dr. Singh has over 22 years of progressive experience in managing and leading various aspects of human resources, spanning across high-paced business domains of ITES. And lastly, we have with us Ms. Divya Jain, who is the co-founder of Seco. Divya is the co-founder of Seco, which is an edtech startup that is a video-based social platform to match jobs in seeker seat, funded by Sequoia's Search Fund. A recipient of the Asian Achievers Award, Divya is a social entrepreneur working for the past 10 years to provide a solution for the massive unemployable youth of Indian subcontinent. Divya was the CEO and founder of Safe Educate, which has been awarded government contracts worth over $30 million in progress. Over to, and the moderator for the day is Ms. Urvi. Thank you so much for joining in. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Urvi Gupta. I lead the HR for digital enablement at KPMG. I come with about 13 plus years of experience in the industry. Expertise lies in talent management and development. I'm very excited to be a part of the session associated with BRICS Chambers and the event today, especially because of the diverse panel that we see here today. Our panelists have not only excelled in their own fields, but they have actually done a lot of work that has left a very positive impact on the society. and has benefited a lot and has benefited the professional community a lot. So I'm very privileged to be moderating this. Very happy to be here. In the previous session, we kind of deliberated on what is the future of work, how things have changed, work from home has become the new normal. Every job today, almost every job, I should say, can be done virtually. Reach and speed are the most important aspects to get customer satisfaction in today's world. Some also argue to say this paradigm shift actually has come with a silver lining. The companies have started to realize the power of technology and what people can do. We've actually seen a flurry of jobs suddenly coming in, which otherwise would have taken decades to recognize. So what are these jobs that we are talking about? What are the challenges that the new job market has gotten for us? How are the business models changing today? And what can we do to upskill and reskill to be relevant to the market? These are the main pointers that we'll be discussing with our panel members for the next 30 minutes. Before we get into the Q&A and start the discussion, I would request if we can have a quick 60 to 90 seconds opening remark from each of the panel members on what, in their view, are these new age careers and opportunities that we are seeing. Divya, if we could start with you. Thank you for joining us today. Maybe a quick snippet of 60 seconds in your view. What are these new age opportunities that we are seeing?
Thank you, Urvi. Thank you, BRICS, for inviting me. I will try and stick to time. I had a fantastic listen on the first panel. I hope you guys can provide you some value. We're talking about globalization. We're talking about everyone being connected. And I just want to talk about a trend that we've seen. The more global that we've become, the more localized everyone's gone to. Right. So I think when I was growing up in my 20s, the charm was for, USA and UK. And there was this whole charm of trying to sort of take over the world. Globalization, when I was studying economics at Cambridge, was sort of the main word. And we were all talking about how do we get connected, right? How do I get information from the US? How do I get to know what's happening in the UK, what's happening in Africa, etc. I kind of feel that this tide has turned. And that's what we see. It's all about, US mein ho raha hai, UK mein ho raha hai, Russia mein ho raha hai. What's more important is what's happening in Delhi, what's happening around us. So for me, that's literally the first trend for all of us is localization. I was talking to Pawan Agarwal. He runs Dainik Jagran. This is one of the biggest regional, locals newspapers. They've got over 15 million users. And he said that 80% of their users actually wanted to know regional events. So I think as we look for careers, etc., we need to realize that anything we are doing, and that's become more and more important, is how are you having the skills that is unique to you. Right. So if you are from India, do you know your language, not just how good you're with English, but how good you're with Hindi, even with your basic talents. If I was looking for a job in HR, people would actually look for, do you know the Marathi accent, etc. Right. So I think for me, that's been a huge realization, is that localization is becoming more and more important. I'm going to let the other panelists talk about this more, but definitely the new age careers we're looking at is this huge range of creators, people, personal brands that are being created. So, but I think it's an exciting space.
Yes.
The whole.
Definitely. Divya, I think you made a very interesting point of localization, okay? Because as you rightly said, since the time we start getting into college, it's all about how can I become more global. But localization is what we take from you in the new age jobs. I'll move on quickly to Dr. Ankita and then Arpit, if you could come in 60-second snippets, just your quick views on what are the new age careers that you're seeing. And then we'll get into the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Uri, for having us here. Great points by Divya. To add and just to cover in 60 minutes and to start with 60 seconds and to start with, I would say that, if you look at the fundamentals or basic jobs, probably all of us are where we were. So if I talk about HR or developers, probably they are doing, their part that we were doing even last year or probably before that. But one thing that has drastically changed is technology. So even though I stay in HR for next 10 years, probably the approach will be far different. And will I call it a new age job or a career or an opportunity? Probably yes. It's not just that, AI and data science or probably UI, UX, we keep talking about, that itself is emerging. But in addition to that, wherever we are standing, probably because of technology, we all will have to take 2 more steps, and we all will be transforming our current job to a new job. And that would also be defined as a new career opportunities and job for each individual. Thanks, Urvi.
Great. Thank you, Ankita. I think you made a very valid point, and I have a few questions on the point that you made now on how things are ever evolving nowadays, right? So the shelf life is kind of shrunk for the skills, but I'll come back to that. Before I go to Arpit. Arpit, quick 60 seconds view from you on what, according to you, you are seeing as new age jobs.
Sure. Thanks, Urvi. I think in terms of new age jobs, I would partially agree with what Divya said. I would say that we are in a post-globalized, post-regional world where those lines have been absolutely blurred, because I know, for example, people who graduated from our fellowship, and there's this girl sitting out of Jodhpur, and actually a village very close to Jodhpur, working for a firm in the US on sustainability for Bitcoins or something like that. Like some sort of a job that would not have existed, or we did not know that something like that could ever happen, where somebody who's sitting out of Jodhpur is working on not a conventional sort of a thing, but understanding the sustainable development impacts of cryptocurrencies and things like that. Similarly, I know of people who are from places such as New Caledonia, who are attending permaculture courses, and who are working as permaculture consultants for NGOs in India. So now you look at that whether it's not just, I would say it's localization and globalization both, but to an extent where none of that really matters. Your geography doesn't really matter. And even the kind of jobs that are coming in, they are, obviously the older jobs, the older job models, they still do remain relevant. But then the newer ones which are coming in are, qualitatively different. I also see people, going with 2 to 3 different types of, almost parallel careers running together. A person who's, part-time a designer, part-time, doing something absolutely differently. And with the pandemic, I think, those sort of options are much easier for people. And, what we say, it's become a cliche term, so I hate to use it now, but the gig economy, etc., that's becoming real. Absolutely.
No, Arpit, I agree. And I wanted to just tell you that in the previous session, we discussed about the gig economy at large. And I also have a big question on gig economy, which I'm thinking, should I pick it up? But this is the talk of the town. We can't just ignore it. We have to talk about it. So thank you, all three of you. Maybe we'll take a step ahead and get more focused in the same area about the new jobs. And Divya, I'll come back to you. You're so close to the employment market, and the points that we picked up from Arpit, that it's both about localization and globalization. The points that we picked up from Ankita, that it's ever evolving, right? So you learn something, it becomes obsolete. If I have to tell you to talk about for the next 1 minute about being a little more specific on the jobs that we're seeing in the market. And the second part of that is, we are seeing that, but how sustainable are these opportunities? So Divya, to you on specific jobs that we are seeing coming up, which we hadn't in the past, and how sustainable do we feel that they are?
Right. Thank you for that, Urvi. So I'm going to start, with Dr. Ankita's points. That technically, yes, there are brand new jobs and career opportunities, but a lot of the jobs that we're seeing are actually existing jobs plus. So at SECO is a platform where we're actually looking at the CV and the JD being the job description and the CV being the student. Okay. And we're trying to see what's that actual gap that's existing. And the view that we see is, we've taken an academy-wise view. So we've taken the entire sort of graduate plus kind of ecosystem, and we've divided that into into academies. And the sectors that we are seeing high demand and high pull is definitely product management, is definitely areas like marketing, finance, consulting, SCM ops, and finally growth. So these are the 6-7 academies where we find are a lot of the new age opportunities. Product management is essentially, since a lot of services were physical, so it's like a storefront. Ki dukaan kaun chalata? Product management is literally a virtual person who is managing a customer experience. So every touch point with the customer is managed by a product manager. So I think that's a huge opportunity and a role that is become that always existed, but that's become way more relevant in today's sector. And I think hamare time everyone wanted to be an engineer. Today, I think every IIT in BITS wants to be a PM. So for me, that's definitely on top of this agenda. The other areas is marketing and growth. Again, since a lot of sales now have moved from traditional in-person selling or through newspapers, etc., a lot of us selling is through your phone and the ads that you're seeing every day. So growth marketers have become incredibly important, and that's a role that's going to grow. And finally, I think when I'm looking at ops, etc., all operation roles have also become extremely technical. So people handling even generic supply chain operation roles is something that we're finding huge demand for. Like I said, I think overall would be what we find is every person needs to have 2 types of skills. It's now a generation of multi-skilling. You can't sort of say ki meko finance aata hai, yeah, I'm a sales agent. Like Ankita, you have to be an HR plus. You need to know all the softwares, etc. Around that. You need to have a vision and thought around that. So if that's a thought that I'd like to leave with is PM, growth, sort of ops, and finally multi-skill. Is how do you see yourself as an individual, figure out ki meko kya skills chahiye and how do I develop that across an arena of things versus a simple certification.
Sure. Divya, I think multi-skill is what will be my takeaway here, because like you said, you can't be defined by one thing. And I have a very interesting question on this, Ankita, for you in the next section, which I will pick up. But currently, I'll come back to Arpit now. So Arpit, you also do environmental consulting, right? And we did hear an array of jobs or fields that they were just charted out for us. I wanted to understand that SDGs are now becoming or gaining the importance that they actually needed for a long time. And a lot of work is being done in the sustainability sector. It's not only like in one department of a corporate firm, they're responsible for some CSR or something to show that they're doing. But now corporates are actually investing time and money to be more sustainable. So I wanted to actually understand from you, what kind of new jobs are you seeing in that sector? Is that sector also coming in demand when it comes to a job market? Has it also been a participant of this soaring job market that we see?
Absolutely. I think, when you're looking at sustainability as a thing, as you rightly pointed out earlier, I remember the first, job I had gotten was a consultancy, a talent management consulting role in Gurgaon, and we used to consult a number of these Fortune 500 organizations. And even there in India, most of the sustainability stuff, except for 1 or 2 organizations where you had sustainability PhDs doing stuff like that, it was all the HRs who were handling the sustainability vertical over there. Now, cut to not even 2020, 2021, cut to 2017, 18, you started getting people who have, gone a master's in sustainability or who have a whole career in sustainability, heading the CSR departments, etc. But even then, I think at that point of time, the whole idea was that it's the CSR department which kind of, rights the wrong of this whole dystopian world. And the rest of the people in the company essentially just make plans and strategies, as they used to do. And now I think gradually we are also moving to a generation where it's not just with the CSR department, it's not just with the boardrooms, but it's a whole of the company sort of an approach. And now gradually what I personally feel is that that sharp distinctions between a private sector company or a social enterprise, etc., those are starting to get blurred more and more as we are going. Because even when we are looking at, as I just said, crypto, we are talking about sustainability. Even if we are like, for our fellowship that we run, we get so many people from all of these oil and gas industries who are trying to figure out alternate business models, who are trying to sustainability is now just sensible from a business model perspective as well. So which means that not just there's a, obviously it's a huge human demand to take the sustainability path just for the sake of survival. So new jobs are inevitable to come in that field. But now we are also at that stage where it's profitable. There's a lot of business models around that. And just on the bit of skills, I remember that when we were at the World Economic Forum, the last time it happened in person in Davos back in 2020, we held a number of focus group discussions. And one thing that emerged, we were talking about, what are the skills of the future? What would be the things that will be needed, etc., to a number of global leaders. And one thing that emerged was circular economy. And we were like, circular economy is not a skill really. So we started talking to the leaders, and what they actually meant was that for any job, you need to start thinking in, with a circular economy logic. So even if you're in marketing, you need to think of it in terms of, how much are you, what's your carbon emission if you're traveling a lot, and how can you use some of the resources or as products more efficiently, and how can you reuse some of the things as an organization down to the very micro job profile, so that you can use your resources maximally and not waste much. So that's when we asked them that, okay, what do you mean circular economy as a skill? That's what they meant, that, that's the kind of thinking that you need to just weave into everything that you're doing. So we can talk about the various specific job roles which are coming in, and there are plenty of them. But what I'm saying is that even in the traditional jobs, the logic of organizing resources is changing to a great extent.
I think it also links back to Divya's point that, old jobs plus. So, and now sustainability has kind of become one plus that a lot of companies are adopting. So Ankita, Dr. Ankita, I'll come to you. We've heard about the new jobs coming in from Divya, from Arpit, some new words, some new areas. I am a person who's just starting out, right? I have now the awareness and the bouquet of job opportunities available. So being a tenured profession in this industry in HR and seeing all this happen and change, what would be your advice to people who are just starting out? How do I decide what I want to do or what I want to pick up?
So thanks, Urvi, but a very difficult question, because again, it cannot be generalized. Every individual will have their own set of interest, and that's how we start selecting our subjects, right? Before we start talking about our career choices. My suggestion to people who are just starting would be do a research. I mean, we keep talking about this is what we will see in 2025. Now, if you talk about 2019, probably whatever was projected for 2021 and 2022, it didn't happen. And few things, those were planned for probably 2050 with respect to technology, it happened within a month for most of the organizations. So the pace is something which cannot be defined. The changes are something which cannot be controlled. So putting a list of future skills or future jobs probably will not be a right thing. What my suggestion would be, when we are starting, we have to understand one thing, that we may be expert in one particular area, but is that skill set relevant? will I be accepted in the market, right? So you have to do a lot of research where we are now, where the world is headed. And that's the reason I keep repeating that you need to research, you need to be intuitive, and you need to keep learning. So today, if Ankita feels that, with 22 years of experience in HR, with proper degree, PhD, I'm done, and that's how I'll survive 20 more years, probably that's not the case. Tomorrow, a junior or maybe a person with 5 years of experience would be doing much better if I am not, able to handle people, if I'm not able to handle data. I keep collecting, but I'm not able to analyze. I'm not able to do any risk management of that. I'm not able to enable the systems which are within, with the help of AI, UI, or Internet of Things. So these things, every individual has to understand what are my capabilities, what are my challenges, how far I can go, which is the right skill set that I can possess, which is the right path that I can select, and what is the longevity, where will I land? And still, to conclude, I would say that they should still have the acceptance that probably I have invested 2 years in learning this thing, and when I am out of this, when I'm done with certification or course or a full training, that job may not exist, and I have to be ready to reinvest, reskill, and start with something new, which is the need of the time. So that's my take on it.
Ankita, brilliant points. Actually, you helped put some background to my next question. But yes, we have to be ready to reinvest, rebuild. So I'll just mention before I go to my next question and the next panelist. I was the other day listening to this talk by the president of Infosys, and he made a very interesting point that we study for the first 20 to 25 years of our lifetime to work for the remaining 30, 45 years, right? And he termed this entire concept as case in point learning, which should now actually change to lifelong learning, where you keep the point you made, Ankita, you keep to learn, to relearn, to unlearn, and then be ready to learn again till the time you are relevant. So, Divya, I'll come to you with this point that we just made. What are your thoughts on how work and education get intertwined? Because now it's not about case in point learning, it's about continuous learning, lifelong learning. So how can we intertwine education and work to basically achieve this result?
Sure. I'll take a step back, Urvi. I think at some point all of us need to realize that what we've gone through is a once in a lifetime sort of event, activity. I hope it's once in a lifetime. I cannot experience any more of these. And for a lot of the students who are here, I mean, this is one of the hardest time in the history of humankind, right? And you've seen it. Now, if I look back, what were times like this? The Second World War, that was devastating. The nuclear bomb attack in Hiroshima, that was devastating. Hitler's attacks, and please understand, this has changed the trajectory of how we knew human history, right? Hitler aaya, uske baad Germany, it's completely changed. Fascism doesn't exist anymore, right? What happened in Japan completely changed the culture of Japan. It made it what it is today, right? It's changed the world's reaction to, usse pehle everyone was fighting, oh, even I want my nuclear bomb. Everyone wants nuclear, right? Suddenly you see the devastation, your mind changes, right? You suddenly talk about world peace. So I'd like to say that this is that time in human history that all of us have gone through it, and this is going to create lasting change. Everything we believed, we do not believe that anymore. Everything that we held right is not right anymore, right? जो पहले mindset था वो आज mindset नहीं है, and it's not going to be there for the next 5 to 7 years. So I think that's one, that mindsets have changed, right? Earlier, if someone said, oh, by the way, I'm working with you and I'm moonlighting as an Instagram influencer, I'm telling, oh, by the way, I'll pay you 10,000 rupees. Can you please put up a post on Seco, right? I mean, can you imagine this happening 3 years ago? I'd be, that'd be a gun to our head. Like, what is this happening? So this idea of multi-skilling, of having multiple roles, of having multiple skills is now a reality. Companies, old companies, right, have woken up to it, and we're okay with that. And that is something that as employees, you also need to realize. And first of all, it's okay. There is no date. I actually have a running company. I started my startup at 37. So there is no hurry. There's no time that's running out. Keep working, keep skilling, do it without the pressure of time. You should have your basic skills. Everyone should know Excel, PowerPoint, Canva, Google Suite. If you can, learn a bit of coding, take care of your mental health and keep learning. So I think with these basic 5-6 points, at the end of the day, I think learning and life should be about us, taking care of us, being happy, and creating a better human race that we want to be happy with and we want our kids to be happy in. So
I'll take that point, Divya, about reskilling and upskilling that you mentioned, that, and also Dr. Ankita had touched it somewhere, that it's about multi-skilling now. Arpit, I'll come to you next. We nowadays talking a lot about, we have to upskill, we have to reskill, etc. And it's critical to meet the current demands of the job market. But achieving this only at an organization level will not be enough. So how do we scale this up? What should be the role of the government, the educational institutes, and the organizations to basically scale this entire upskilling, reskilling things that we're talking about? So Arpit, what are your views on that?
Sure. And if I might also just take the liberty of a historical reference over here. So if you look at, see, anytime when we are talking about skills, what I'm reminded of is this book by a historian called Gordon Childe, and he talks about how from a point where all of the human beings were agriculturalists, how did we start specializing in other stuff, which led to all of the technology, urbanization, etc., that we see right now. And he gives the example of potters. So at one point of time, if you look at historical excavations, you have very basic, crude sort of pottery that you see. But gradually, as agriculture flourished, you had greater surplus. You had people who could free themselves from the whole project of organizing food for themselves, because the society just had so much of surplus agriculture, so much of surplus food. So people could free themselves from not being agriculturalists or not being hunters and just specialize in making pottery or making, all of the other sort of technology. So as a thumb rule, what Gordon Childe says, and I agree, that surplus creates specialization. Wherever you have greater surplus, you see greater specialization taking place. Now, what has COVID done? COVID has indeed created lopsided surpluses, but overall, the global economy has shrunk in many industries, and you see that there is, in a relative, even if a relative term, overall it might have grown, but the expectation of growth has reduced a little in many industries. So, which is, concomitant to saying that there's been a shrinkage of surpluses that we have. Now, whenever there's a shrinkage of surplus, you do the opposite of specialization. You become more general in the skills that you have. And that's why back in the 1980s and the 1990s, even early 2000s, the good career advice was that you become really, really specialized in a niche skill set, which is now absolutely turned over its head. Now you're talking about some of the skills that Divya was talking about, but you're also talking about effective writing and communication, which is trust me, a skill which is super needed and super rare. Then things such as solving complex problems, not just solving static simple problems, but solving dynamic complex problems. Fundraising, trust me, I mean, whether you're in the government, you're in the private or in the public sector, you could be in the HR department, but if you understand how to fundraise very well, then you have a leg up over the others. And as I said, thinking circularly, etc., etc. So I think those are the kind of new skills which are needed cross-sectionally across the places. In fact, we are fundamentally a research and policy consulting firm. And when we realize that not enough people whom we recruit as researchers, etc., can write effectively. Not enough people, can contribute to fundraising for their NGOs or for their organization. So that was the reason why we started this global fellowship, the GPOTS fellowship that I've been talking about. So the idea is that now firms will have to create those ecosystems themselves. And doing that in collaboration with universities, I think in India, and something that I noticed, when I was studying and then teaching in the US, is that there's a lot of dependence of the industry on educational institutions. I was also, at one point of time, engaged with San Francisco State University's Center for Lifelong Learning. And that sort of a culture of school, uh, university, enterprises, the government working in tandem with each other has already been there in many pockets across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think, with the whole digital thing taking place, I think that's something which is going to grow, where you're going to see more partnerships, not just the university doing education, not just the organization doing product development, but sometimes the university doing the product development and the organization doing education. So it's going to be a mix and match of all of that.
So I'll take a quick point from there, Arpit and Ankita, Dr. Ankita, question for you. With all this happening, do you think that skills will become more relevant than degrees in the future?
Urvi, that has already become the case. People are interested in knowing what you are capable of doing than what you have actually learned, what you are capable of practicing and delivering. That has become more important. So I have been hearing this a lot of time, what got you here won't get you there. And it primarily talks about the degree. Probably degree got you here, but if you do not upgrade yourself, we are not able to put that into action, or if you're not able to implement, probably you won't be able to go ahead. So yes, I would not say that we can do without one, but skill definitely holds a higher place as compared to a degree. That's a mandate. Degree probably gets you the first level entry, where they say that fine, so you have this, that's a mandate check probably. But something that gets you in and defines your growth in the system is your skill.
So I'll stick to you only. I have another question. You've been associated with the ITES industry for a long time. And a slump or a soar in the job market is not very different to this industry, right? There are new skills, new technologies, they come up and they kind of become obsolete. And then another new set comes and they become obsolete. So just a quick sense I want to get from you, how different this entire change that has come in the last 12 to 18 months in the technology field, how is this different from what we've seen in the past happening in the technology business only? How is it different?
So IT, if you primarily talk, Urvi, it has gone up, right? The need has gone up. Probably that's one industry which didn't get impact in a negative manner because of COVID. Now, when we talk about the shift, obviously there is more need to upskill, where earlier the need was just from the organizations end, where we were pushing our people, that this is your current certification is, and probably we have to go a plus, and we were just pushing them that this is the requirement. Now people have started accepting, more of self-reliance can be seen, where they know that it's not the responsibility of the organization alone. I have to reach there because technology every day is changing, the demand is changing, and to meet that gap, probably they have to get themselves a level up. So there have been a lot of challenges earlier. The changes or the shift, when we talk about training and development, the shift that was defined for a period of 2 years, now we literally have to focus on programs where we ask each other, what about next 3 months, or what about next quarter? Where are we going? Where are the skill gaps? So that's the major change that I've seen. But as I said, it has become more manageable, achievable, because people have also realized that if they don't contribute, or if they don't become the part of the game, probably it will be a loss for everybody.
Very valid points, Dr. Ankita. If you need to be in the race and if you need to get profits, you need to upskill, reskill, change your mentality. That's something that we've observed. I think before we get on to asking our participants if they have any questions, I have one last question and kind of closing remark for. I would request all three of you, Dr. Ankita, Divya, and Arpit, to comment on very crisp answer. Just want to know that in this changing time where there are a lot of opportunities, what is that one thing as per you, an organization and the future workforce? So an organization and a professional should do that one thing to leverage the benefit out of this. And no random order, anyone can start. Maybe start with Dr. Ankita, move to Divya and Arpit. Just one thing that an organization and a professional should do.
Stay adaptable. Things would keep changing and just keep changing. I mean, you would not be able to control a lot of things. So you just have to go with the flow in the right sense, in the right direction. So I would say stay adaptable.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ankita.
I would say bias to action, right? I mean, learn a skill and it's easy. It's not as hard as we make it up to be. So don't complicate it, learn as you go. But for sure, bias to action, the world's going to keep changing and change with it, grow with it.
Arpit, I'll move to you and then maybe I'll come back to what Divya just said.
I mean, of course, stay adaptable. Don't be in the present, stay in the future. Maybe, if some of the folks who are in the room want to invest in learning, then learn in this whole new discipline, which has become all the more important now. Future studies, and it needs a lot of qualitative as well as quantitative thinking, but absolutely worth it if you want to learn about that. And also don't get restricted because you think you may not have some resources. Just partner with the right people, and now you have the world where you can get all of the resources you need to get things done. So yeah.
Thank you, Arpit. I think the three things I'll just summarize that very, very good for us to take back as an organization and as a professional, or even as someone who would be now starting their careers. Be adaptable. So I think Dr. Ankita somewhere mentioned that you prepare for the future, but you also prepare that what you prepared for might not be relevant anymore, and you are ready to start from the scratch. I think the second point, the way I particularly personally hit me a lot is what you said, don't complicate. Yes, the current scenario is too complicated. Everyone's talking about it. What are the challenges, what skills, etc. We've already complicated it enough. Don't complicate it. Just learn a few skills, whatever entices you, have a combination of skills and you're sorted. And what I get, Arpit, from you is future studies. That's going to be very important and here to stay for a long time because of the changing future that we see. So I think very, very specific and very meaningful points from all three of you. Thank you so much. But before we let you go, we will request if anyone has any questions. Our panel members here for another 2 minutes. I think we've already run out of time. But Suzanne, I think we can take a few questions.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, definitely. I think we had few questions from the previous panel also, which I just sent you one. I'm just checking if there are questions.
Okay, maybe I'll just read it out and any panel member can take it. How can we overcome the mental health issues in the pandemic, especially unemployed people and those experiencing financial crisis? Goes back to don't complicate it. So Divya, if you want to pick it up, a few pointers for our audience.
So definitely, I think mental health is something that has become incredibly important and relevant. It's also the circumstances. You're suddenly in a box, you're with the same kind of people. We are human beings, we are social beings. So let's not pretend that these are normal circumstances. It's not normal to not go out into the world. So I think we need to acknowledge and be okay with the fact that mental health is a reality. And really, I would just again simplify this. Say no. right? It's okay to say no. It's okay to say I can't do this. I think, you know, we, as Indians and as people, we're just wired to say, "Acha, boss ne bola hai to kaam to karna padega," right? It doesn't matter if it's 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's a part of like work-life balance, is learn to say no, have boundaries. Yes, you are in a space that you're sharing with your family or your friends. You need to carve out that time for you, and just resort to the basics. I use an app called Headspace. That is fantastic. There's the Silva method, so you can YouTube or Google it. So, you know, spend just 5 minutes every day on Headspace or on the Silva method. And really, you know, at the end of the day, it's power of now. The answers are within you. You know, say, take 2 minutes off and just say, why am I thinking? What am I thinking? And talk to people around you, right? So,
yeah, and learn a new skill, Divya, as you said earlier.
And learn a skill every day.
Great. I'll take another question. Maybe Dr. Ankita and Arpit, either one of you can probably take this up. So the question is, considering the pace of advancement in different industries around the world, with each passing decade, how do we balance between millennials and Gen Z? Because Gen Z would have an advantage given they have the resources and skills. So how do we maintain that balance?
I don't know. So, I mean, if I were to take it, I would simply say that
they won it. They won it already.
Absolutely. No, so certainly, see, the newer generations would always be more current. And I think it's important to understand that, you know, we have to think beyond the hierarchical social order that we've been used to, which means that, you know, as some either Ankita or Divya just mentioned, that we used to earlier have this paternalistic organizations which would take charge of what the employees should learn about. Nowadays, forget about the fact the organization will not tell you that you need to learn this. Nobody is going to tell you that you need to, you know, gain a sense of what is a good fit for you. And if you're looking at Gen Zs, then learn from them. Learn, you know, what are the new waves which are coming in, and I know a lot of individuals who are able to gel as well with the Gen Zs, with the Gen X, or with the Boomers. So be that sort of person who can just you know, be that malleable and you know, learn and understand and be that humble that you know, they can get mentored by anybody. So I think if you're still thinking in those terms that this person is a Gen Z, you know, try and if you're a boomer, try and beat Gen Zs to their game. And you know, some people do that, and you know, the Gen Zs love that. So the thing is that just mix it up, and don't worry so much about this generation, that generation. Just, I think, just be open and cool, yeah, and you'll figure it out.
I'll take the last question, Dr. Ankita. It's for you. What kind of working model is ideal in the current scenario?
Urvi, that would be, again, I think all the questions that you are throwing at me are not a generalized one. So again, it completely depends on the organization, right? And now I would say individuals as well. Many organizations where they want, you know, we keep talking about hybrid model, but there are organizations who would never be able to pick up hybrid model. They will have to have their people in there. There are few organizations who have already declared that lifetime work from home is there, right? So it's one, the culture, the you know, the purpose, or your core work, what's the need and what is required. And at the same time, wherever there are possibilities where you want to define your organization norms, now employees are coming up and they are saying, you know what, I'm ready to work, but these are my conditions and these are my terms.
Absolutely.
And you would see that most of the organization, they would say that, yes, we will take it case to case basis. And that's the norm for the work model, the work way, or the workstation. We all evolved with the term work from home, and we moved to work from anywhere. Now, all that matters or required is is a system and internet connection. So things are evolving. Things will further change, where there will be much more freedom to the organization as well as to the employees. So there's no set pattern, no set model that can be defined at this point in time.
Absolutely with you, Dr. Ankita. In fact, in the previous panel, we heard a statement from one of the panel members who said that it's not the time to actually aim for being the most sought after employer. You should be actually the unique employer, right? So everyone has their unique models to work with. So I hope we've given that answer to our audience. Thank you so much, Dr. Ankita, Divya, Arpit, for taking our time today. It was a very interesting discussion. I am at least taking back a lot of jargons with me that I got from this call.
That's not the point. The jargons is not the point.
So I hope our audience has benefited the same. Thank you so much again, and over to Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Urvi. Thank you, Arpit sir, Divya ma'am, and Ankita ma'am. Thank you for joining. It was definitely a very interactive and a fun session as compared to the first session. I think the first session was a bit more intense, and I think this was comparatively a little, like informal in a very nice way. So thank you so much for joining in. So we will be stopping the live stream now, as we have a workshop